All right, so here's what's going on. All right, we caught 5 tarpon last night in the pass in an hour, which is like a record. And I caught one that was pushing 180 pounds, 6 foot long. Miss Terry caught one. Everybody in the boat caught one. All right, Miss Amelie had tubes put in her ears this morning, and she's doing fine. And Miss Kristen's getting married on Saturday. All right, so that's what's going on. So you guys think that we don't have a life. that none of the stuff that happens for you happens to us. We go fishing, we have grandchildren, we have children that get married, we have weddings, we have wives that put on weddings.
Do you care?
The tarpon got the best of you at one point, though, right?
The tarpon got me, man. Threw me up against the side of the boat. Got a little WIA, but I hung in there. It's called mental toughness.
Did you make any wedding decisions? Were you consulted?
None, and have not been consulted. Kind of found out early in the down that the wedding wasn't just about Kristen, but it was a little bit about Miss Terry too, so we just kind of stayed out of it, you know. Kind of like playing against the wind. Just got to run it.
Coach, you've had a lot of guys from the Saban tree, so to speak. Jim McElwain, what qualities did you see in him that have led him to this point?
Well, you know, Jim's did a fantastic job for us. First of all, he's a real quality person. Players really respect him and like him. He's a really good teacher. He's innovative in terms of things that he does that create problems. And I think he really has the best interest of the player in mind and the game. But he did a fabulous job for us. Did a great job of managing the players that we had and putting them in positions to give them a chance to win. And we won a couple championships with him, and he made a great contribution to those.
Do you feel like he was kind of a sponge in terms of recognizing the things that you implemented in terms of organization and support staff? And
well, I don't know about that. I know that he was always very respectful, and he's the kind of guy that is always trying to learn. We learned a lot of things from him, and you know, maybe he learned something along the way when he was at Alabama from some of us.
Nick, about all the topics on the table this week, to you, what's the highest priority? Which one do you like? You know, we've got to deal with this now.
Well, I'd say the cost of attendance thing is probably, you know, the one that, you know, just big picture wise. I mean, even in the NFL, they have a salary cap. So you can't create a system that really almost can promote fraud because, you know, every institution should do a good job of saying this is what, you know, our cost of attendance is. But when we don't have a cap that makes it equal for everyone, it really is going to go against all the things that we've, you know, tried to do in the NCAA in terms of having parity for players, in terms of what their scholarship, what you're allowed to give them, and all those types of things. So, you know, this is an issue to me that is completely different than anything else that we've had to deal with. Now, I'm all for the players getting more. I always have been. I've always promoted it. I've always been for it. I still, you know, think that's, you know, important that we improve the quality of life. I just think there's some unforeseen consequences of this that may affect the competitive balance that we've always worked very hard to try to keep relative to college football.
Mike Slive, in light of that, Mike Slive said this week, told the Associated Press that there's no fairness balance anymore. It's kind of the landscape has changed. So when you hear that, I mean,
well, that don't make it right. And I'm not criticizing Mike Slive. I think I would, if it stays the way it is, you know, I'd agree with that. All right, but I don't think that's. They have a salary cap in the NFL. They have one in every pro sport of some kind, I think, to try to create some parity and competitive balance. So.
Are you concerned that schools might fudge their numbers? Would you like to see transparency of how they're
Well, I think if we're going to do
attendance?
this, somebody's got to make sure that it's been, I just said, you know, we don't want to have a system that, you know, sort of enhances people having any kind of fraudulent behavior that would create an advantage for themselves. So, you know, I think it's really important to that we all have the same criteria, and nothing can be used to create an advantage. And I guess the best way to do that would be transparency.
Nick, I'm not sure.
Suggested that rather than dealing with these cost of attendance numbers, just cover actual cost. So I don't hate the analogy of employees for players, but basically submit expense reports where if they travel home, cover what the cost was to travel home. If they went out and bought clothes, cover the real cost of them, rather than ambiguous figures, whatever they may be. Would that be a potential solution you would support?
Well, I hadn't really thought about it, but I also think that if that was what we decided on doing, or that was what we were going to do, there would have to be transparency in that. And I still think that there always has to be some kind of a cap. To create fairness.
Have you had a recruit yet ask you about cost of attendance? I mean, any recruits you've gone after, I mean, if their parents say...
We haven't had a lot of that yet.
Uh-huh.
I know some people are promoting it in recruiting.
You expected that?
Yes, but, you know, we have not done that. You know, and, you know, the way I understand it is institutionally, from an academic standpoint, which is still the reason that we all have universities and colleges, is that it's in the university's best interest to keep the cost of attendance low. So, you know, and I think that should be the first priority from an institutional standpoint. You know, not really what's better from an athletic standpoint. But, I will not have a vote in this. This is something that will get determined, you know, at the administrative level, which is where, from an educational standpoint, which is where it should be.
Hey, what will Mike Slive's legacy be, in your opinion, to these topics?
I'm sorry?
Mike Slive's legacy?
Well, you know, I have the utmost respect for Mike Slive. You know, I had a conversation with him the other day, and I said, you know, I've been in this league, if you add the 2 years in, 5 years at Alabama, 2 years gone, and this is my 9th year coming up back in, so that's a long time. And I was here when Mike Slive came to start with. And we had a lot of issues in the league at that time. There was a lot of people on probation. There was a lot of people out there, you know, sort of talking about things that created a negative image for, you know, our league. And, you know, he has done a marvelous job of, you know, cleaning that up, as well as sort of elevating the image, marketing, TV, and he's done it in a way where he's very diplomatic in how he treated, you know, all the folks that he has to deal with. He's always been very fair to me, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for him, and really do appreciate, you know, all that he's done, you know, over this period of time that I've been associated with the SEC. And, you know, I think his wisdom, knowledge, experience is something that anyone would miss. And I have a lot of faith, trust, and confidence that, you know, Greg will do a great job as well.
Nick,
I'm
what are
not
your thoughts
sure
on
how-
satellite camps, and what do you expect to get accomplished this week regarding the satellite camp issue?
Well, you know, we have a lot of crazy rules. Head coach is not allowed to go out during an evaluation period in the spring. All right, but you can go have a satellite camp anywhere in the country to bring your staff in and bring players to it. I mean, does that make any sense to anybody? So, you know, I think we should have recruiting periods and evaluation periods, and the only time that you should be able to have a camp is on your campus. And if a player's interested enough to come to your camp on your campus, then that should be the way it is. All right, now, it's not that way, but that's just, and I think it's that way in our league. But, you know, let me say this in general about all rules, whether it's transfer rules, whether it's camp rules, whether it's any rules. We need to have the same rules in the Big Five in all the leagues. All 5 leagues. If we're going to compete for the championship, all right, and everybody's going to play in the playoff system, and everybody's going to compete for that, then we need to get our rules in alignment so we're all on a level playing field. Whether they're transfer rules, whether they're satellite camp rules. It's a disadvantage not to be able to do something in one league and be able to do it in another. It's a disadvantage to be able to recruit a player in one league and not be able to do it in another. And it's also a disadvantage if you start bringing up things like if a player gets suspended or whatever from one school, he can't transfer to another. Well, these things need to be global. Otherwise, we're going to become a farm system for all the other leagues. So, and then the first question we're going to get asked is we win 7 national championships in a row, win a national championship for 7 years or whatever, and the first question I get asked is, well, what's the state of the SEC? You haven't been in a championship game the last 2 years.
Speaking on that, the SEC West has been pretty dominant of late. Is it the toughest this year going in that you've seen?
Well, it was pretty tough last year. I mean, we had, I think 6 teams in our division at some point in time were in the top 15. And in the second half of the season, the one team that wasn't in the top 15 might have been one of the better teams, and that was Arkansas. So I think it was pretty tough last year. I expect it to be, you know, really tough this year. But you know, it's a whole lot different when you play in a league, all right, where you have to play week in and week out, and you have to play really strong competition, whether it's in the East or the West, because I think there's some really good teams in the East too. All right, so you play this kind of schedule throughout the year, all right, then you play an SEC championship game, and then you got to go play in a playoff. Well, I think that makes it even more difficult because of the quality of opponents in our league. And if you look at it from top to bottom, and that's how you're going to evaluate a league, I think the league is in better shape than it's ever been from a football standpoint because there's more really good teams. Now, if you use the barometer that winning the championship is the only barometer for the league, then I guess you would have an argument against that.
Nick, you mentioned the academic athletic balance a few questions back. Is that more difficult, or how much more difficult is that than when you first started in college athletics? And is it nearing any kind of breaking point? Do you still think that the mission of the university can coexist okay with what college sports has become?
Well, I think if you philosophically approach it that way, you know, the first obligation we all have is to help the players on our team have a better chance to be successful in life because they are involved in the program. All right, so that means we're educators, we're teachers, we inspire learning, we create opportunities. All right, that's what we do. That's what you do as a coach. And then the number one thing that contributes to that is first the personal behavior and trying to do the right things, but developing a career off the field, which means graduate from school. That's the number one thing. That's what we do. All right, then they're students, then they're athletes who go on the field and compete at a high level against very good competition, and we've created tremendous opportunities in great venues, whether it's the SEC championship game, the playoffs, and I hope, which I think this was taken wrong, that in my statement about playoff and bowl games and how the playoff affected the bowl games, my issue with all that is the bowl games need to be held in high standard and esteem because that creates a lot of positive reinforcement for a lot of college football players. It always has. All right, so to watch games and people aren't interested in going to those games concerns me for the players. Okay, so that's kind of what we do.
You talked about the reality of that harder than it used to be?
Not for me.
Student first.
Not for me. Because if you look at it from a process standpoint, all right, and you have a process of how you're going to go about these things, I think, you know, the means helps you get to the end. When you have a good program and you do these things and you promote personal development, you make guys do the right things when it comes to school, all right, and you make them do the right things and have the discipline to execute, whether it's personally, academically, or athletically, all these things carry over.